Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Joining me today is not Zach Bartels. I'm going to get to my special guest in just a moment here, but I'm totally looking forward to this. Want to do a quick shout out to Missional Wear, though. Once again, want to thank them for all the work they did in helping sponsor us for our giveaway that we did last month. Just letting people know we have not forgotten about you. It was just we had a lot of people respond to this, so just kind of getting all the product together and ready to ship off is going to take some time, but we have not forgotten. You will get it, and I will let you know on air when it's up and ready to go. If you didn't get a chance to participate in that particular contest, fear not. We will have several others coming up in the future, and so you can hold on to your hats for that and just give us a listen, give us a shout out on Twitter, Facebook, or drop a review on iTunes. That always helps us out. Without further ado, want to introduce Daniel. Is it Biro or Biro?
Oh, you know, as long as you call me Zach Bartels, I'm Gabe.
Nice.
I actually, you know, it's Daniel Biro. I don't really have a preference, but side note. If the band wasn't Hawk Nelson, I think Zach Bartels would be epic.
That would be a pretty great band right there. The Zach Bartels band.
I mean, it's just as confusing. A lot of people think Hawk is a guy. So,
right.
So Zach, whenever you listen to this someday, if you ever do, you got a great name.
Nice. Let me ask you, since you brought it up. Where did the name Hawk Nelson come from?
Ooh, well, see, I wish there was this like really deep spiritual meaning, but you know when you're like in high school and you're trying to put a band name together,
yeah.
And your options are like, okay, our options were Bob's Your Uncle, Jim Dandy, Chain Link, and Hawk Nelson, and for some reason, we searched on like Google and it was like Hawk Nelson was nothing. And we were like, hey, like it sounds like a guy's name, but like we could use it as a band name.
Right.
So no deep meaning. It just was a dude's name, but wasn't actually a dude. So.
Right. Nice. Now I'm curious. So Bob's Your Uncle, isn't that kind of like a British term for like right on or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. That wasn't one of my ideas, so I can't like claim to that.
Okay.
But we thought Chain Link sounded too like hardcore, like you know, like Skillet, Chain Link,
right?
You know,
right.
And then Jim Dandy is just like a joke. So, yeah. So Hawk Nelson. But what's funny is at the time Hawk Nelson sounded just as ridiculous. It was like, oh, like. It doesn't mean anything, but you know, it's like when you name your kid, like or something, like you give it that identity. It's cool,
right? No, and it is a great name, and you know, like I think if you put like a cool Predator name in front of anything, it's gonna eventually sound cool, you know. So like you've got Hawk in there, and so you know that's really all you need.
It's like Eagle Nelson. It could have been the same thing.
Oh, nice. So let me ask you, Daniel, just to kind of give a brief bio about yourself personally. We'll kind of get into the band stuff later, but you know, you came on here, and so I want to talk about you, find out about you, and you know, family, friends. Do you have any of those things? Do you want any of those things? You know, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, man. What can I say? God has super blessed me with an awesome life. I grew up with a great family. I'm trying to think, maybe around the age of 13, though, my parents split up and you start questioning a lot of, you know, your beliefs and those things, and your teenage years are hard. And I remember those being very tough years, but somewhere in my later teen years, this guy approached me and said, have you ever thought about pursuing music as a career? And I thought, no, like you can do that. Mm-hmm. And I was just like playing at church in a youth group, kind of praise and worship band. And so that he kind of put that seed into me, and then started playing local shows with a local band. And before you know it, these guys asked me to come join, and then we started Hawk Nelson out of high school, and God has taken us on this 16-year journey. But in the meantime, I have a wonderful wife, a couple cats. We're adopting some kids from Haiti.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, no complaints, man. I think that life is full of ups and downs, but like God has been the constant through it all.
That's great. Let me ask you, did you, I mean, this person approached you when you were 13, but was music, what was on your radar before that? Like, what were you kind of thinking, I'll grow up and do this, or I'll be this? If you weren't hanging out with Hawk Nelson, you're the bassist, correct?
I am. And when they asked me to come play, I actually didn't play bass.
Okay.
So that's interesting. You know, what's funny is I've never been able to answer that question. That's so hard. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
Like, I mean, aside from like the childhood, I want to be a fireman and an astronaut, and
right.
But in all reality, I was never able to answer that in high school, and it's very frustrating when you're trying to tailor your learning when you start to think about college and university. So I always wanted to be independent. I never necessarily wanted to work for the man,
sure,
quote unquote. But I feel like this was not like a plan. It was just totally a God thing. And, sure. And even like, as I look to the future and beyond music, I have to take inspiration from that and know that like someday, you know, this band will finish and God will have my back in the next venture, whatever that is. But I can't tell you what that is either.
Right. Do you have, I mean, obviously you've got to have other passions and pursuits, beyond music. So what are some of those passions or pursuits that, you know, you could see yourself like kind of flowing into? Yeah,
I'm not all of them are like necessarily like occupational, but it's funny, man, like just being on the road and touring. I think like when I'm at home, I'm like the polar opposite. You'll find me like in the garden, like planting veggies. And last year we took on beekeeping with honeybees.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And I was like, yeah, I'm totally going to be a beekeeper and apiary. And like, I'm going to do this full time. And I realized like, holy, this is a lot of work. And, I have mad respect for people that work in like with agriculture or bees or whatever it is. Like, it's a lot of fun. I'm a big lover of coffee. I don't think we see eye to eye on that, but you know, God made it, so I figure it's got to be okay.
That's right.
So yeah, man, maybe some venture in that. We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were involved with the band fairly early on then, right? I mean, is this like seems to be, from what you were saying earlier, like a high school band that kind of formed and matriculated out into what it's become. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah. So basically, the other guys in the band and they had a band called Swish. I had this band called the Cheese Monkeys from Planet 9. And
nice.
Somehow we all ended up playing shows together, and we were at the show in upstate New York called Kingdom Bound.
Okay, yeah.
You probably heard about it growing up in New Hampshire. And then somehow like we were like playing on like the side park stage, and like we had won the prize to get to play a few songs there. And those guys asked me like, hey, like, man, we're thinking about putting a band together, like a real one. And we were all finishing high school, and I didn't know what was going to happen with life. So I said, they asked me to come play bass, and I said, I guess I can learn. I was singing in the other group. And so one thing led to another. And then so as we, you know, practiced every day in our church basement, and we all worked side jobs, whether it was washing cars or building doors or all the part-time jobs. We just funneled all that money into like a band fund, and we bought gear and a van and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Nice. So how were you all approached to kind of begin the launch of the career and what's become Hawk Nelson?
Yeah. So we spent all of our time and all of our money like doing like writing, recording, touring. We started up in Canada in Toronto, basically, and we would play clubs with other like punk rock bands back then. And it's just funny because like it was such a different scene than what we're involved in.
Right.
But we didn't really know what we were supposed to do. So we're like, God, wherever you want to open the doors, we'll go there. And if you close doors, that's okay too. And so we just worked hard, and one thing led to another. It got some attention from a friend of ours. His name's Trevor. He's in a band called 1,000 Foot Crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of like a bigger brother in our hometown. And so he was like, I'd love to work with you guys. I think you have some potential, but you need some help with writing. And so we started working with him for a year, and we kind of started writing our first like record that people came to know, which was called Letters to the President. And he kind of like pitched that. He kind of was like our he pitched us to Tooth and Nail Records in Seattle, and we went out there and recorded it in 2003.
Nice. Yeah. And you guys, I mean, you've had an incredible journey here. I was just jotting down some of the accolades that you've received over the years. I mean, several Grammy nominations, 2 Canadian GMAs, GMA Dove Award nominations, Juno nods. I mean, you guys have really done a lot and have, really set yourselves up and made a name for yourselves. And I'm sure it's no different, the difference of, being in a secular band versus a Christian band. I think, some people have this, stylized version of, Christians are always on their, tour buses and, praying and reading their Bibles and things like that. But you unfortunately hear a lot of stories about bands and band members, even, and unfortunately a lot within the Christian community that are kind of, they're singing one thing and they're trying to put up this appearance of one thing, and then they're doing something completely different. How do you guys keep each other accountable and centered on Christ to allow your testimony, to allow the light of the gospel to shine through?
Well, man, you covered a lot of ground there. First, for me personally, I don't necessarily measure our career like by those kind of like award things. Like I appreciate that, like you're painting a picture like that we've had some success over the years, and that's true. God has totally blessed us. A funny thing about the awards though is like we personally actually have not won very many. We've always been nominated, but we're always the band that loses. Right. And so it's like we've always come in last place in the track meet or something.
Right.
So it's like we participated, but we didn't win. So in a way that like makes me happy. It makes, I don't know, because it's just not about that.
Yeah.
But God has still been good, and like you say, with that comes like an added level of pressure. Like with any level of success and probably in any career, I imagine people, and so, I've seen, other artists for sure. They've gone off the deep end, I guess you might say, but even within our own band, between all the members we've had challenges for sure. And like, we try to be there for each other. And sometimes that's actually easier in the van days when you're all like stuck, crammed into this 15 passenger van, and you're driving through the night, and like there's really no hiding from each other, and hiding your feelings and emotions. But then when you get to the bus stage, and you're kind of maybe home a little more, and you've got your own things going on, your own families, your own struggles, you can start to feel a little isolated for sure. And that's when it did get a little harder. And I think that, I don't know if there's any like perfect answer to like keep things perfect all the time. Sure. But I know that for us, like I've always viewed the guys as like brothers, and with your own family, it's sometimes like a love-hate thing. Like you can butt heads, but like at the end of the day, you love each other, and that's how I see these guys, especially right now. This group of guys are like they're my best friends, they're my brothers, and I would do anything for them. And music is a great part of that, but it's not like the core of why I value them or love them. So I don't know. I mean, well, how do we?
I was just going to say, let me ask you. I mean, is it fair to say that it's not because I think you're right. I think I pictured like this kind of trash up or totally perfect scenario, but the fact of the matter is, we're all broken people, and so living, figuring out how to live that life with one another as broken people saved by God's grace, presenting that real front that, you mentioned that sibling thing, and I have two brothers, and, it's just, you feel that friction sometimes. It's like, I love you, I'm willing to die for you, but I'm also willing to kill you some days.
Exactly. You literally nailed it on the head. Perfect. Yeah, man. And man, we've been privileged to be on awesome, Christian tours where, there's often a road pastor out or a daily devo, or not always, but even just sometimes I feel like that's helpful. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have that in their jobs, right? It's you're in this very kind of just non-Christian environment probably that would be weird for people. So I kind of feel like we actually have a leg up, so to say, by having other Christians around that I don't know. We like to say this, and hopefully it's the truth, that you can extend a little grace to each other.
Right. And to me, I think too, one of the things that I've learned over the years in terms of viewing Christian celebrities, whether it be pastors or whether it be musicians or athletes or movie stars, is that idea that no matter what's being presented on that kind of front there, they're still broken people too, and I think sometimes there's a little bit of, there's a little lack of grace when it comes from the Christian community when you hear about, so-and-so, has done this, or so-and-so has done that. And, it's like, well, they had this huge platform and they blew it and messed it up, and just understanding that, it's only by the grace of God that we all don't totally just ruin our lives each and every day.
Totally. Honestly. Yeah, you're right. And so, yeah, man, I guess that's a real thing. I guess, I tried. Yeah, it's weird. And then on top of that, you try to somewhat portray when you're in a public light that you do have it together. You don't want to mess up. You don't want to let people down. But like you say, we're all just people.
Right. Yeah.
and so that is an added element that I often don't think about.
Let me ask you, because you recently, I'm not sure how recently, but I think fairly recently, you had some health problems, didn't you, that kind of kept you from going out and touring with the band and recording with them? Is that true?
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, man. I'm only in my mid-30s, but it was a couple years ago, young 30s, I guess. A tumor started eating away my tibia bone in my right leg, and I was I didn't really know it. So I kept touring and limping for a whole year. Right. And that whole time I was didn't know what was up, but it was, And so 3 years, 3 surgeries, finally 2 years ago was my last one. Thank you, Jesus.
Nice.
They just kind of removed a big section, big knee replacement, give me a bunch of metal. And now I'm
you're the bionic man, huh?
Yeah. I'm wait, now I'm just stronger.
Right.
So yeah, man, it was really challenging at the time, but my wife printed out this verse that we put all over our house, on the piano, on the fridge, in front of where I brush my teeth. It's Psalm 34:19-20. And we were really believing for healing. And I feel like that's come in a roundabout way, but, it's for the righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to their rescue each time. And the Lord protects the bones of the righteous, and not one of them will be broken. And that was a prophetic word written, I think it was 1,000 years ahead of Jesus' time. It was actually about him.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel we can hold on to the same promises for ourselves. And so we just clung to that verse, and man, it encouraged me that wow, sometimes in Christian culture, we think, oh, we won't face problems. We shouldn't face problems if we're living a holy life. But it's actually the righteous person faces many troubles. It's pluralistic. And so anyways, yeah. So it kept coming back each year. And each year I was like, God, why is this happening? And like, but then I look at that verse and I'm like, you come to my rescue each time. And if you've done it before, you're going to do it again. And now I'm on the other side of that. I'm just so grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to ask you, and I mean, you can, feel free to answer, however honestly you want, or, even have me take this out in the edit, whatever. But my question to you is, maybe for our listeners, is that always the attitude you had during that time it was going on? Because I know for me personally, I've been in the middle of trying situations, and like I look back on it, and it's much easier looking back to see that good and to see, God carrying through. But I know during the time it was like I was gritting my teeth and I was, pounding my fists in the wall, like, really kind of wrestling and struggling with God throughout this. I mean, did you have similar experiences doing that? Or, but I also know people too who, they go through adversity, and it's just kind of like, it's kind of like the David versus the Daniel. David a lot of time is, like, God, why have you abandoned me? Why have you forsaken me? Why are my enemies, pounding around me? And then you have the Daniel, which it almost feels like, yeah, this is life. This is what's happening. God's going to have me thrown into a lion's den, but it's not going to change my, my view of him. Where was your kind of heart and thoughts during that time?
Would it be bad if I was a little bit of both?
Yeah. No, and I think that's a fair assessment too.
I mean, I feel like I just had so much support from the guys in the band. I had to miss I think 3 tours and 100 shows kind of thing. And finding favor, his name's Dustin Daniels, the bass player. He filled in on a couple, and Ruben from 10th Avenue North filled in on a couple. They were just super, so to have that support. Yeah. It took a lot of pressure off me from that perspective. And the guys were supportive. So I was at home and watching FaceTime videos of the concerts and nice. It's just that was kind of unique. Not everybody would have that kind of support, I guess. But but I remember other times, man, what's crazy is I learned a crazy lesson through the whole thing. It happened pretty similar. In terms of a timeline, it happened pretty quickly after my wife and I, we went through the process of moving back to Canada from Nashville to be around family. And we had built a small house, but it was very stressful with the builder. And in the end, he tried to take it and not give it to us. And there was lawyers, and that was really stressful. And this is a Christian guy. So I don't know if it was a stress induced thing or not, but so I was going through this, I went to a healing service at a church, cause I was like, hey, God still heals people. I'll try anything at this point. Right. And I sit down and I look over, and down the aisle is this guy that we had just kind of gone through all this stuff with. And I thought, oh shoot. And right there in that moment, the Holy Spirit was like, you need to forgive him. And not just in your heart, but you have to tell him. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm I came here for a physical healing, not this kind of healing. But so you know what? I just knew it was just I just knew. And so I found him out in the lobby and told him, and I said, I know you're asking for this, but I'm just choosing to release you. I forgive you, even though I don't feel like it. It's the right thing to do. And I don't know, man, something lifted off of me that I believe was God was able to physically heal me because of that lesson learned, kind of thing. When you forgive others, you can be forgiven. So I don't know, man, that's not the exact thing that you were talking about, but that's something that I went through. Yeah, no. And I think that's great, because I think there are times, we obviously, I think you can swing too far in a direction where, we don't ascribe anything to, anything physical that can happen to us to, our sin or, the sin of others. And we can swing too far in the other direction, saying, well, no, that doesn't happen anymore. And, nothing like that ever happens. I think Christ comes into the world, and, you see a balance of both going on, where, there are so many times where it's this person sinned, and so they need to be forgiven and healed of their sin before they can physically be healed. But, then the disciples come to him, and it's oh, well, why was this man, what did this man do to sin to be born blind? Was it him or his parents? And it's
neither. I mean, he was born this way so that, God's power could be demonstrated in his life.
Totally.
And so I think that's cool that you bring that up and you talk about that.
I mean, that's just my story, man. I mean, it's weird. Like I'm not really able to run, and I used to be a runner. But I'm not gonna cry because like I'm walking around. I can play concerts.
Right.
When I was in the hospital with all these other patients with similar situations, a lot of people lost limbs and muscles and things, and it's like, I'm not going to complain. Like, right. I'm going to shut up and be grateful and thankful for life every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is one of the unique things during a sickness or an injury like that. First of all, you talked about just so many people coming around you and supporting you through that. But then being in the midst of people who are literally going through worse than you are, and you can just, just see that and really, be so thankful that, that I'm not in that position, God, you haven't taken my limb from me. And so, having that attitude of gratefulness.
It's important, I often think, I think I'm going back for a checkup in a few weeks, but I often think it's actually kind of healthy to visit hospitals and just sometimes see that side of life's fragility, how fragile it is. And, because, or else we can get caught up in our Western, oh, I need more, I need bigger, I need shinier.
Yeah.
And, what? We have breath in our lungs. We've got food on the table. We should be pretty grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because you and I just kind of dove right in. And so I do want to make mention again, I'm talking with Daniel Biro here, and we are talking about Hawk Nelson, latest record that came out, Miracles. That came out, was it March 3rd?
I think it was April 6th. I could be wrong, but it was just this month. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So, we will be getting in and talking about the record, I promise. But I'm having such a great time just talking with you about your testimony and, the ministry that you've personally been able to have. So that's great.
Nathan, I don't personally need to self-promote anything. I feel if God wants to use the record, he's going to do that. We've done our part, so nice. It's all good.
Nice. And I'm sure you've been all over, call-ins for radio shows all over the world and things like that. So, I feel free to kind of just talk to you and hang out with you.
Nice.
Let me ask you, getting in, this is one question that I love asking people, because I think no matter what you do in life, you have inspirations, you have people that you look up to, and you can't help, to a certain extent, imitate that. And so for a musician, I love asking, who are your musical influences, and where do you see yourself kind of imitating some of those people in your music?
Yeah, man. It's funny. I'm technically the bass player, but I'm probably the least musical in the group. You got those people in your life that they can play everything. Yeah. They can sit down and they can play. I'm not one of those. I can't read music. I never aspired to be a musician, quote unquote, until these guys asked me to come join their band, really. And
right.
What's funny about it is I'm the last one standing from that group of 4 guys that started this band.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's funny because I'm being the least musical. I'm a little more business minded, and
mm-hmm.
I love traveling and meeting people and hearing their stories and seeing what God's doing. But to me, the music is a secondary thing, which is so funny. When you think about being in a band, you think of rock and roll, but I think it's funny because I realized it's probably 5% of the job, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So much of what we do is just travel and meeting people and
mm-hmm.
hearing their stories and getting to share in their vision for an event or for a tour or whatever. And so we jump on stage and play music for a few minutes, and then we pack it up and move on.
Head to the next one.
Yeah, but man, I really love Tim Foreman, who plays with Switchfoot. I just think he's got a really cool presence. I know like one of his big influences is Paul McCartney from the Beatles. And I think Paul McCartney's stuff is really melodic and cool bass lines. And I respect that he could sing lead vocals as well as play really cool melodic bass lines at the same time. Cause I can't do that. So yeah, man, but, my buddy Matt, taught me how to play. So I really appreciate his influence. We were just in youth group together, the praise and worship team. So like, yeah, I don't have any big names for you. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally cool. And again, this is one of the reasons why I love interviewing different people and talking with different people, is because everyone just has their own unique story and the things that they do. And so that's really cool.
It's true. It's true.
One of the things that I want to talk about, and it's going to lead me kind of into, another question. I talked about, some of the nominations that you guys have had, but you've also had some experience with film and TV as well. American Idol. Now, I just saw the like press release. I get the little press release kit when musicians come on, and one of the things that I saw is that you guys, one of your songs was used in the Olympics, and then in the movie Jumanji. Is that? Tell me about that. Like do you like does somebody just kind of like, you've already recorded it and so they're just like, oh, we're taking this and we're using it here? Or do you go and actually, record it specifically for those events?
We've had a little bit of both depending on the situation. In regards to like the most recent thing, like that Jumanji movie with Dwayne Johnson, like I feel bad. I still haven't seen it, but They used it in the trailer, which is really cool. I would have preferred if it was in the movie, but I'll take what I can get.
Sure.
That was just like, that's a song called Just Getting Started from our last record on Diamonds, that for some reason it made its way into some hands of Sony in Los Angeles. And then they've just been pitching it for different things. So it's been in like a lot of different like TV and film things. And it's funny because everyone's like, did I just hear Hawk Nelson? And so I'll like go and like watch the trailer, and it's funny that someone even noticed because it doesn't even have any of John's lead vocals in it. They just took the music bed, like the track.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason they thought it was good enough for that moment that their trailer it only featured Hawk Nelson and Guns N' Roses. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, God, you're funny. Like, you're so funny.
Oh, that's
so
great.
Those things are always really fun opportunities. Like, another time, like way back when we were like a different band, we got to go to Hollywood and actually be in a movie called Yours, Mine, and Ours with Dennis Quaid. And that was one where the director actually called us and said, man, we need like a party scene song, this kind of vibe, like, can you give me something? So it was very specific, and so that was a song called Bring 'Em Out.
Nice.
And we wrote it for that, and it actually ended up going on our next record, but it was written for the movie.
Nice. Now, did you get to meet anyone from the movie when you did that?
Yeah, it was fun. We got to like go and actually, we were like in the party scene, and it was funny. We were walking around like behind on the set, and Rene Russo noticed John's tattoo on his arm, Tetelestai, meaning it is finished. Yep. And she says, I'm a Christian too. Would you like to come back to my trailer and like have a little like Bible time? And we're like, what? Nice. We're like in Hollywood, and you just don't expect this stuff. But that's when you realize, like, man, God is like working in so many people's lives in so many different ways. And I don't know. That was just really cool. Yeah, we got to meet a bunch of people. It was really exciting.
Nice. That's very cool. And so that's going to kind of lead me into my next question, because again, I've had opportunities to interact with many different people, and some of them more famous than others. And I remember when those opportunities came around, this bubble just kind of burst around the lifestyle and the way that these people live and interact with other things, and so, just talking to you, because Hawk Nelson isn't, it's not a little indie band. I mean, you guys, you're out there, your name is out there, your music is played on, soccer mom car radios all around the United States.
That's funny.
And so, it is a big deal. And you guys do have several number one hits that have come out over the years. And so my thought is with that there's also, there's a level of success that has come with that, being able to make a living doing this and getting your names out there and being more famous. I just before we went on here, I always try to go on when I have a band on and I interview someone specifically, hit them up on Twitter so that way I can retweet and people can see, just kind of check out this interview and things like that. And so, you have a significant number of Twitter followers, for you personally, even outside of the Hawk Nelson name. And so, people are following you on Twitter. So you have a level of stardom and success, but is your life like, sitting in your room and servants bringing you grapes and cheese and all that stuff? Talk to me about, what the life is like for you, when you're not on tour, what are your home chores that you have to do that when you get home, your wife just kind of looks at you and she's like, hey babe, I've got a long list for you.
Oh man, this is hilarious. It's like a mini version of that, segment, like Stars. They go grocery shopping.
Right.
They change their own socks. Yeah. Except, dude, that's so funny. God has definitely blessed us with, a name that you're right. Basically, someone pointed out to me, that in Christian households in North America, you're kind of like a known name. And I was like, wow, how did that happen?
Right.
It's just amazing. However, we've totally been blessed to be able to make a somewhat of a living from this.
Yeah.
For 15 years, which is a long time.
Yeah.
But dude, I'm the guy that cleans out the toilets. I'm the guy that rakes the yard. I'm the guy that does the dishes. I'm the guy that, whatever it is, man, there's nothing. I just did the cat litter last night. I mean, I'll do whatever it is. And you know what? That's what I really appreciate about this group of guys is, generally speaking, we've done a very good job, I feel of just keeping down to earth. We realize, everyone has the same value, whether you're Michael W. Smith or whether you're Bono or whether you're that indie band that's opening up. And so, yeah, man, you could pretty much any disgusting job or chore you could think of. And, I'll probably be doing it this week.
Get Mike Rowe to come around and interview you for dirty jobs.
Seriously, man. I won't go into it, but there's stuff.
We're going to be playing an intro to your song. He Still Does Miracles at the beginning of this. Actually, for those who are listening, that song was on the intro. You've already heard it. That's kind of the problem with pre-recording podcasts is you forget what's the past, present, and future sometimes. But so for those who are listening, they will have already heard that song. Tell me a little bit about that. And because the name of the record is Miracles, and then you have this song, He Still Does Miracles. So talk to me a little bit about that and how that all came about.
Yeah, so we were finished our last record, Diamonds, maybe 3 years ago it came out. Mm-hmm. And, after a year, I remember John was like, hey, we should probably start writing for the next one. And, man, it just, as the year went on, nothing was really coming together or John's a great writer and I've always respected him in that, right? But, man, just nothing was really kind of working out. And I think the bar had been set a little higher with our last record. Songs like Drops in the Ocean had really resonated with people, which was good, but it's a double-edged sword that you now have to rise to the occasion. And,
right.
So man, it was just not working out. And I remember calling him at one point when I just knew he was beating his head against the wall, flying to Nashville for some co-writes, and he lives on the West Coast now. And man, I just said, you just gotta, I think we just need to like not do this for a bit. Like, let's just not do this. Like, let's not force it. And it's when that happened that we actually kind of were like, okay. That then God breathed a whole bunch of new songs into the process. And like, that's when Miracles came about. And, it was going to be called Miracles, the song as well. Okay. But this band called Unspoken have a song called Miracle that was released like a month before we were going to release. And we didn't know that until we like heard it on the radio. And we were like, oh shoot. Like, and so someone was like, yeah, you probably need to change the name if it's going to get played on Christian radio at the same time. And we were like, that's okay. Well, he still does Miracles. We'll just call it that.
Right. Now let me ask you about that real quick, and just let you continue. Like, do you run into that often, where you're kind of thinking of something, and it's like, oh, I just heard this title for this song, and so my question is kind of like, do you change it because you have to, or do you change it just so that it doesn't get confused with something else?
Ooh, yeah. I guess it hasn't actually happened as much as you would think. Like, I would think like it would have happened before, but this was the first time in our 15 years that's ever happened. And we changed it more because we wanted radio to be able to play both songs at the same time. It was just a logistical thing that like a couple of big radio stations were like, yeah, like if you change the name, then we won't even it'll be a non-issue. Right. And if you don't, then it might be an issue. And we're like, okay, let's just change it. So, yeah, it's funny.
Nice.
I love the Unspoken guys. Their song Miracle is actually really good.
Sweet. I want to read a little bit from this one song. I was, again, just kind of, before we went on air, I was looking around and just kind of going through some of the lyrics, and I was noticing the lyrics, and it's not, I don't believe it's to Miracles, and forgive me, I forget which one it is, because I came home from school and we had set the cast time up for 5:30 Eastern time. And by the time I got home from school, it was like 4:40, and then my wife came home with my son, and it was like, hi babe, how you doing? I got to prep for the podcast real quick. And so I grabbed the lyrics because I do love the lyrics on this song, and you can tell me which song they belong to. I'm telling you, there's no such thing as hopeless for a believer, no such thing as broken for our Redeemer. No war he can't win, no fear he can't face, no hurt he can't heal, no soul he can't save. There's no such thing as hopeless for a believer, no such thing.
You got it. That's the song. It's called No Such Thing.
Nice. And because I was looking through, like I said, I was just looking through the lyrics, and I love those because it places all of the power and supremacy with Christ. Yeah. And I more and more hear songs that, it to me, there's a muddling of the gospel message. There's a muddling of who Christ is. You almost hear these lyrics where it's like, you can't tell if somebody's singing about Christ or somebody's singing about their boyfriend or girlfriend. Yeah. You can't tell, you can't tell, if it's this, happy-go-lucky, psychological mumbo jumbo. And I just love those because it all comes down to, him and who he is. And the reason we have hope, the reason why we can continue and pursue is because it's all in his hands, not in ours.
Yeah, man. And like, I didn't write that song, John did, but isn't that true? Like, when things aren't going the way you want or the way you planned, like, those are lyrics that I myself, like, I need to fall back on. Like, I need to put the situation in God's hands, because like sometimes you're just like out of options, like you don't know what to do. Yeah. And so it's yeah, man, I'm inspired too. Like when I actually sometimes like some of the songs I love, some of them I don't love as much. Yeah. But all the words on this record, man, like I'm very inspired. Like I'm actually probably going to go listen to it now.
Nice. Yeah. And I got to say, honestly, that's one of my favorite things about doing this. I think I have a lot of favorite things. I think I've said that a lot on this podcast, but I really do. I mean, being able to do this is cool because one of the things that I get to do is I get to get pre-releases of the music. So, I got, before the album drop, I actually got it a week early, and was able to listen to it. And, it's so great. And it just shows, I love when scripture does it, and I love when music does it too, where it just shows our frailty and our weakness and Christ's strength and his power. Because first of all, it's the truth.
Yeah.
We are nothing outside of him. But second of all, it just shows how great and mighty our God is and how we can rest in him and who he is.
Wow, preach it.
Dude, just going to say, we are winding down on time, unfortunately. But I want to give you the floor, last few minutes, just kind of say anything you want to say. I know you kind of have trouble promoting your record, so I'm going to do that right now. Talking with Daniel Biro from Hawk Nelson, the album Miracles. Go out, pick it up. It is a really great album. And before we sign off, Daniel, I just, like I said, want to give you a few minutes, kind of, anything that's on your heart that you want to talk about. If there are any, mission organizations or causes that you want to put out to people and you'd like them to go and check those things out, you have the floor, man.
Yeah, man. I think there's a lot of organizations. I love what they do. Humanitarian organizations like Compassion. Mm-hmm. We've seen them at work. We've had the privilege of sponsoring kids for years. But I really believe that the biggest mission field for each of us is just in our own lives, those people around us. And for me, that has meant family. It's not always like this. Like I got lots of people in my family like that, whether I don't know if they're saved, some are and some claim to be. But you know what I mean? Like I would just say to anyone listening that I believe it was Mother Teresa, actually. Someone said, how can you change the world? And she says, go home and love your family. Because that's like the revolution. You know what I mean? This is your world, and no one can influence those around you like you can. And so this is the biggest lesson I'm learning is that, big world stuff, that's great. Those are good things. We need to be reminded that there's people in need all around the world. But here at home, man, just in our own walls, I think people can feel trapped and depressed and alone. And I think that we can be, we can be there for them. I'm trying to think of the lifeline or whatever. I don't know, man. It's been interesting learning that. And, like I say, my family isn't like this picture perfect situation right now, but I'm holding them up in prayer and believing that in God's timing that, that God's going to do the work and maybe that sometimes that's through me. So
nice.
I don't know if anyone's listening, I would just say, learn to love those around you. Cause I think that's, if we can all learn to do that, then something is going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Nice, man. Thank you so much. I'm going to be linking, all this stuff like crazy, but I'll throw a link up there for Compassion because you're right. They are such a great organization. My wife and I have sponsored children over the years through Compassion as well.
They are awesome.
And so I'm going to throw a link up there so people can link up with Compassion. And if you feel so led to sponsor a child, please do so. But once again, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on and joining. This has been fantastic. I wish we could sit here and just talk for several more hours. Unfortunately, I've barely seen my wife, and so if I don't get off, I think she might kill me.
That's what I'm talking about, loving those around you.
That's right.
Okay, Nathan. Well, I appreciate you too, man. Thanks for having good questions, doing your research, listening to music. I hope it inspires you and everyone listens to it. I feel like just be open to letting God use it. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and sign off now. Daniel, we just rocked the Casbah.
These go to 11.